You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Okay, hello. My guest today is the Michelle Dempsey-Multack. I've interviewed so many fabulous women on this show, and there is just something about Michelle that excites me so much. Perhaps it is because I've probably followed her the longest of anyone I've interviewed, and I know it's because she was one of the first people to accept my pitch. It was just such a meaningful day. I don't know if anyone listening follows me long enough to know the day that Michelle accepted my pitch. I did a whole dance on my Instagram story. It was just very exciting. And I don't know, I just love her, and I'm thrilled she agreed to talk with me. So, anyway, Michelle is a certified life coach and a National Association of Divorce Professionals certified divorce specialist. She is a writer, coach, speaker, and founder of Moms Moving On. Under the Moms Moving On umbrella, Michelle hosts a podcast, leads a community, and offers one-on-one and group coaching and support for women and moms going through divorce. Michelle's first book, called Moms Moving On, Real Life Advice on Conquering Divorce, Co-Parenting Through Conflict, and Becoming Your Best Self, is available for pre-order and set to release in March 2022. And last but certainly not least, Michelle is a mom to Bella, a stepmom to Jolie, a co-parent, a spouse, daughter, and friend. Today, we obviously talk about divorce. We talk about the mental and emotional challenges. We talk about mindset and the misconceptions out there about divorce. Michelle talks of her childhood, the experience of her parents' divorce, and how that prepared her for stepmotherhood. Michelle shares what anxiety looks like for her and how her life changed with medication. We get into so much, so without any further ado, here's Michelle. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
I have followed you for a little while now, but I think I just want to start with how. So because when I look at your platform, your business, your community, when I hear you speak, if someone told me you've been doing this for 20 years, I would believe them. But it's actually not that long of a time that you've been sort of this public figure and this voice for women. So how so fast, such a short time, did you get from where you were to where you are now?
First of all, thank you. I don't see myself as a public figure. I'm like, the mom just trying to hang on by a thread tonight because my daughter's homesick. But let's all just take a minute to accept that a high follower count does not make somebody better at something than somebody else. I know amazing therapists and attorneys and people in the divorce space who have no followers whatsoever. So while I think, yes, people will say on Instagram, I definitely kind of take the lead in the divorce space, maybe because I've been talking about it the longest. I still feel like I'm learning every day and I'm growing every day because the truth is I haven't been doing this 20 years. I've been a coach and a certified divorce specialist for a little over a year and a half. I've had my podcast for a little over a year and a half. I was always an educator, always a writer. So that sort of plays into what I do now and the fact that I have my first book coming out. But I've always been really a deep feeler of things. And I went through a lot in my life. My childhood was not ideal, and it just so many undealt with issues, spiral into tough times in adulthood. And I learned so much about myself when I was married to my first husband, when I married the wrong person, when I then had a child with that person, when I was sort of faced with this like mirror of all of the things that was wrong with me and all of the things that needed help. And I thought, oh my God, I really realized only I have the power to shape how I'm going to feel from this day forward, how my daughter is going to live her life, what she's going to see as she grows up,
Mm.
as with me as her mom. And that's when everything really shifted for me. And I think I have so much passion about helping other people through the same thing that I've been through, that maybe that's what speaks to
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, but my core belief is like, I never want another woman to have to go through what I went through without feeling the support or without having the knowledge to help her feel empowered in her journey. So that's my how, and probably also my
Yeah.
why. But I'll say that, how I grew a following, I think it's really been consistently putting out the same
Mm-hmm.
message for a long time. I had already been writing for a number of mommy publications before I got divorced. So when I did, I was happy to see that, like Scary Mommy was really on board with me shifting the nature of my content to
Mm-hmm.
co-parenting and single motherhood. And with that, my following grew for
Yeah.
sure.
I saw so much there, but you mentioned a shift of realizing that you had the power to push through and to change your mindset, I think was your words on. And what do you think now that you do come in contact with so many women who are now in the shoes that you were in? What's stopping them? What's the hard part about this mindset shift?
I think it's um, the fear that we live in and the lies that we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
One of the lies we tell ourselves, or that we grow up believing, is that we need to have somebody love us in order to be worthy, or in
Mm-hmm.
order to feel fulfilled, or in order to be complete. And I grew up without the love of a father. So I, was typical daddy issues girl, went looking for it everywhere else. And then it wasn't until my marriage imploded that I realized, oh my God, the love isn't out there. It has to be in here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think it's that, coupled with the fear of the unknown. I've maybe you've been in a relationship so long where your spouse has conditioned you to think that you could never make it without him, or nobody else will ever love you. Every
Yeah.
woman I work with has heard that. And so sometimes it's easier to believe the bad stuff, and the devil you know is different than the devil you don't know. And I think that's where a lot of women kind of stop themselves from taking the next step.
Yeah.
I can't blame them though, because the next step is a hard one, but I think that's what it is.
What are some of the other challenges, I guess? So someone is now we've just addressed what might be stopping them from making the mindset shift to, okay, I've got to leave this marriage. What are some of the other challenges that they face once they've made that decision?
I think the challenge is then, we're women, so we're nurturers, and a lot of us are people pleasers just by default. And so the next challenge is, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? Am I a failure? Am I shameful?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to feel guilty for what I'm doing to my family, or what this might mean for my kids? And I think that's the next challenge, is accepting that you can take ownership over this decision. You don't really owe anybody, you know, your happiness when you lay down at night with who you lay down with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's personal. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we put so much power in the opinion of others that it makes a difficult time more difficult, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Dr. Elizabeth Cohen, the divorce
Ah,
doctor.
I love her. She
She
just endorsed my book. She's amazing.
Oh, she's the best. I interviewed her a little while ago, but I just edited the show today, ironically. And so one of the things that she really drove home, and I think it speaks to what you're saying, is that divorce, just like many other challenges that all of us face, it's a transition.
Yep.
And it's just really it's all of the stigma and the judgment. And I mean, there's a lot more to it, right? I'm
No, I
oversimplifying, but it's some of that from society and the pressure and the, you know, the fear and the embarrassment and how someone's going to look at you now or talk to you now that really adds a level of challenge that I'm sure you would agree times 20. It just
yeah,
wasn't part of the equation.
right. And I think, what Dr. Elizabeth Cohen says is something, it's an analogy I use all the time, right? Like, think of other life transitions, like losing a job or shifting your
Yeah,
career
that's
every
exactly.
once in a while. People are going to be like, oh, but what happened? But why? And couldn't you have? And da da da. But you're not like intimately connected to that job or whatever. So it's easier to just like shrug off what people say. But I think it's because it's touching on a nerve in an intimate way that you feel either, you have to explain your rejection from your partner or the fact that you just didn't feel anything for them anymore. And I think that's where it's looked at as more than a transition, but it really is. It's nothing more than that. If you were to lose your job or you wanted to make a career shift, I've made many, you kind of just go about it because at the end of the day, it's your life and your bills you have to pay, right? So I truly feel it's the same with matters of the heart.
Yeah. What do you wish more people knew about divorce in general or about the women you work with? Like, what is misunderstood about the concept and about these women going through this?
I think the biggest um, misunderstanding or the thing that people really think is going to happen, which doesn't always happen, is that your kids are going to be messed up.
Mm.
Um, I always say it's not the divorce that messes up our kids, it's the way we handle ourselves in divorce and co-parenting that could. And in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cases, you'll have one parent who is consistently doing the right thing and one who's very difficult or high conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, even in those cases, your children can still thrive because Harvard research shows it takes one stable caregiver, an emotional caregiver for a child to thrive. So the likelihood of your child just, laying in the street shooting up heroin because you got divorced is pretty slim. Like if they do that, it's probably not going to be because of the divorce. I could tell you that had I stayed in my marriage and let my daughter grow up in that type of environment with a woman who was only living like at 50%
Yeah.
of the amount of life she could have lived, that would have been much more detrimental and would have done her much more of a disservice.
Yeah. I think because kids, I think more than anything, they see the behavior, they see the
Mm-hmm.
attitude, they see the mindset. You can talk at them all you want, and that's helpful, but they're really going to grow up to model what they see.
I mean, I think about like when our kids make those Mother's Day cards when they're young and like when in like preschool, right, or kindergarten, and it's like, my mom makes me happy when, and then it'll say something like, she kisses me or she plays with me. Not once in the history of ever have I heard of a child writing, my mom makes me happy when she's married. Like that's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah. Right.
And so
Right.
I think we take for granted like
Right.
what our children actually value
Yeah.
and versus what society tells us is the thing children need.
Right. Yeah. And I'm curious. So you have one daughter, Bella.
I do.
How old is she now?
She's 6.5. She'll be 7 in a few months. And I just live and breathe for this little human.
No. So have you thought about, fast forward in time? Have you thought about how you're going to feel, how you're going to talk to her when she starts showing interest in maybe getting married or pursuing a long-term relationship? Like, I wonder how that's going to hit you, And I'm curious if you've thought about that or curious about if you've thought about what you're going to say to her and how you're going to approach that with her.
Yeah, well, look, she's already at an age where she sees the differences between her father and I. We have 50-50 custody, so she gets just as much time with him as she has with me. And she's a very intuitive, perceptive, emotionally in tune child. And
Mm-hmm.
so, she used to come home and say, Mommy, I realized why you couldn't be married to daddy. It's because you like chocolate candy and he likes gummy candy. And,
Oh,
you know,
so sweet.
but now but now she's able to use different logic to understand. And,
Mm,
mommy handles situations in this way versus here's how daddy handles them. And they're so different.
hmm
And this makes daddy upset. This doesn't make mommy upset. This makes mommy upset. This doesn't, so she sees our differences, and she also sees me in a really healthy, stable marriage. I'm remarried.
hmm
So I don't, I think for her, the message that I'm really consistent with is you, you're not responsible for anybody else's happiness. You're responsible for yourself. It's not your job to make people feel a certain way. Um, and I think that would just be the lesson that I send her off with as she explores her first relationship. I mean, yesterday we were going through her baby clothes and she was already pulling aside what she wants for her children and when she gets married. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like she's scared of that concept yet,
Yeah.
but we all enter adulthood with these fears and ideas about relationships, right? But I
hmm
think, I'm very big on preaching to her that your happiness matters and your happiness comes before somebody else's.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's because even as you were talking, saying, this makes daddy upset, this makes mommy, I mean, it's a lot for a kid. And they process things right from their own perspective. So,
Yeah.
it's seeing, just to use example, I know that you meant it in all different ways, but seeing daddy upset or mommy upset, their first instinct, unless they've been talked to by a parent, is to go, what did I do to cause that?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, and that can get tricky, especially if, say, you, the mom, aren't around when that's happening with dad. And, now I'm just speaking very broadly, but
Hmm.
I think that's a good reminder. I think for all of us as parents, all of us as women, just people, that we have to do that for ourselves, but also to instill that in our kids.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So remarried now,
Yes,
you're a stepmom,
I am.
and I heard you share a story that I thought was really just such a good way of explaining the relationship to a point. You were sharing about how in your childhood you had a thing about the front seat, and
Oh, yeah.
at times your dad might have had a girlfriend who sat in the front seat, and it was just devastating for you. And
Uh-huh.
I thought that was like, God, it just hit it on the head of how, as adults, we wouldn't even really think about that. Like, I'm curious, what advice now, being a stepmom, what advice do you give to women who are coming into stepmomhood or could potentially? What are some best tips?
The number one tip is that you don't come first, and you have to know that and be okay with it. And if you're somebody who's going to call up her friends complaining because could you believe, you know, he took her dinner order before mine when we went to the restaurant, then this probably isn't the relationship for you. I think honestly, we all end up where we're supposed to be. And I think the experiences I had as a child, being an 8-year old girl whose dad just only cared about whoever he was with at the time versus how I felt, it made me that much more aware of how my husband's daughter would feel when I came into her life. And I think as potential step parents or as, the girlfriend of a man with children, especially daughters, you have to realize how threatening it can be, even if the child loves you. Like, thank God my stepdaughter took to me like, a fish in water, but it's because I never made her feel like I came before her or that
hmm
I was taking all of her dad's time. I tread really lightly, or I did, while we were dating.
hmm
He would want to invite me everywhere they were. And I would say, no, why don't you enjoy this time with her? Because I knew what it felt like to like never have my dad look at me because he was looking at somebody else. And
Yeah.
that was a really horrendous feeling. And I think that's why my relationship with her is what it is now. And also, when there's a biological mom who
Yeah.
might still be reeling over the loss of the marriage or who is not in the same space as, her now ex-husband is with someone else in a relationship, the child feels that like, oh, daddy's happy with somebody, but maybe mommy isn't. And that
Mm.
wasn't our case, but I see it in a lot of situations. One parent moves on before the other. And knowing that the child is going to have to grapple with feeling a little bit guilty
Mm-hmm.
also should be at the forefront of your mind, because no matter how much you want to love them and how much they want to love you, they are going to feel bad about enjoying you when they know their other parent is unhappy about you.
Yeah.
So that's important to keep in mind. And if you really love the person you're dating and becoming a step parent to their child is in the future for you, you have the rest of your lives together. Like there's no rush to like just play house just because you miss the feeling of playing house or
Mm-hmm.
because you're dying to be somebody's mom. Like take it slow, because slow and steady always wins the race.
It sounds like it might take a really incredible amount of maturity to be in that type of relationship. And it crosses my mind too, even the difference between, again, generalizing, but being the woman in that environment versus the dad, being the stepmom and with the dad versus being the stepdad involved in the woman. I'm going to try to say that again.
Yeah.
Because,
No, I know what you're saying.
because even like you just said, he's thinking, great, got all my girls together, got all my kids and my girl, let's go have dinner. He may not even be thinking of all the things you just said.
He's not.
Exactly. So
Right.
it really takes
And
the
most
woman's
people,
like touch almost and intuition to think.
100%, you hit the nail on the head. It's the woman's touch. I have so many clients, who call me or hire me freaking out like, my ex has a new girlfriend and this is going to be so bad for my kids. I'm like, well, is it? Because now you have a woman who is innately like designed to pick up on the needs of a child in a different way,
Yeah.
right? No matter how great dad is, a woman can sense feelings from a child. A woman will know, oh, it's chilly, why don't you put on another layer? Like all these
Right.
little benefits.
Right.
And that's why I used to say to my mom, because my dad's girlfriend was his affair partner. Like he was having an affair, and then my mom caught him and he stayed with this woman, and my mom treated her like a queen. And I never understood for the life of me. I said, Mommy, why are you so nice to her? What? Because I knew who she was and where she came from, and that's why the marriage ended. And she said, honey, because she takes care of you.
Yeah.
And even if I don't like her and I don't like what she did, she spends time with you, and I want to know that she's treating you well, so I treat her well. And there's so much power in that.
That's amazing. I mean, that's even, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the emotional, oh my gosh, it's just emotional, but it's so, I guess, so impactful to you and how you know what? I don't want to say that. You know what it is?
What?
You know what it is? I'm coming around to sharing with you my experience, and it hasn't felt organic yet, but I feel myself like really hesitating in conversation because I don't share the same experience, but I have experience.
That's okay. Let's hear your
Yeah.
experience.
So I don't, so my parents are married and together, but my dad has a previous marriage that he has 3 children from. So I'm the last one, and my mom is a stepmom, and my siblings are my half siblings. So I've seen this dynamic that we're talking about throughout this conversation in from a certain lens. I was much younger, and I was the one living in the house with both parents, and my siblings would come every other weekend, and then they would leave again. And they were much older than I am. Well, they are still. They're still alive, but it was just I think it's partly why I feel, and I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm feeling like stiff in this conversation, because that's kind of how I felt in that dynamic, and wanting to talk about it and ask about it and be a part of it, but not knowing how and not knowing the best way, and and not wanting to step on toes and hurt anyone's feelings, and ultimately knowing that there was this little bit of a whatever, because from their eyes for a long time, I was like the lucky one sitting in the house with the 2 parents and didn't have to deal with the split Christmases and all of that. And I've just gone on a long tangent now, but that's
okay.
my lens of this, and so it's It's challenging because I have, like I said, I have the perspective of my mom, in my mind, being the stepmom. I know how challenging it was for my dad, and I see it now play out with my siblings and how it's affected our relationship. It's
Right.
very complicated.
It is. It is a complicated thing, and it's so different for everybody, right? Like my experience is not going to be the same as everybody else's, but
Right.
ironically, I went through this traumatic childhood with in regards to my parents' divorce, which by the way took all of my entire adolescence to finalize. They separated when I was 8, they got divorced when I was 18. It was hell.
Mm.
And but it really just built me for now. And it's funny how those things happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, did I end up divorced because of the issues from my past? Probably, but did the issues from my past prepare me for that? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like you came out of it. You survived. You know what I mean? Like if it's not divorce, like it's something else. Someone has something else that they went
Hmm.
through. And I don't say that to minimize or diminish your experience at all. I say it to just equate that. I don't know. I feel like divorce is put on such an interesting stage where it's like immediately associated with negativity and harshness and judgment, and it's such a shame because I think you sitting here would say you're happier than you've ever been.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just if it's not that, it's something else. Like we all have our stuff, is what I'm what I'm getting at.
We all have our stuff, and I truly do believe like that we do have to hit some type of rock bottom in order to be able to find that happiness, right? Like I'm very happy with simple things
Mm.
now, whereas maybe 10 years ago, I would look at the girl with the big fancy house and the fancy purses and think that's what I need to be happy. But now, because of what I have been through and where I have been able to get myself, I can value the little things. I'm grateful. I live in gratitude for each day and think to myself, God, how amazing it is that I get to spend another week in the life that I live, even if it's not, the life of the rich and famous. Like it's those things that I think you find happiness in because you've had so much of the opposite for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you have, this community, this support system that you've helped build for other women going through it, what has anything really surprised you about that experience?
You mean within the community of women that I work
Yeah,
with?
yeah.
Yeah. What surprises me is that every single woman I work with is divorcing the same exact kind of guy. Like, I know when I have a new client consultation, I know exactly what her personality is. I know exactly what her challenges are, and I know exactly who her ex-husband is, which, has also helps me in my own personal
Mm,
relations with my ex. But it's just amazing that I don't know if it's because of where we are as a society that women are taking their power back, or too many of us at this age in our lives. I'm 38 years old, so I'm finding that these women that are like 35 to 45 find themselves in these toxic marriages because of undealt with stuff from their past, right? Like as kids, nobody was putting us in therapy. So
hmm.
we're all coming to terms with our issues. We're seeing that our issues led us to these unhealthy relationships. Like so many of us are the same,
Hmm.
no matter what race, religion, color, creed, like that's what's been the most surprising thing for me,
Yeah,
how connected we all really truly are in this process.
yeah. Surprising, but probably also very validating.
So validating.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just before we started, I had a client. And I'm like, oh, you too? Like, I felt like she was telling my story, But it's with every woman I speak to, and maybe I attract the same kind of client over and over. I don't know,
Maybe.
but there really is strength in numbers, and my satisfaction comes from being able to give somebody the advice that helped me in my journey. So I don't know, it's nice. I love what I do.
Yeah. What does the process look like of working with you?
So just finding time on my schedule, on my website, you can look up, I have different coaching packages.
Hmm.
So depending on the package, we either meet weekly or biweekly. If you have something more pressing going on, like you're in the middle of litigation or your kids are adjusting to co-parenting, then people might need me more than not. Otherwise, it's very prescriptive. It's either weekly or every other week, depending on how you want to space out your sessions. And we work for about 45 minutes. We touch base throughout the week, very holistic based on the needs of where the particular client is in that space and time. Most of them are dealing with high conflict ex-spouses, spouses with some type of personality disorder or perceived personality disorder, which makes co-parenting very difficult. So we go through a lot of strategies for how to stick to your parenting plan. Most people don't understand their parenting plan, how to set boundaries for somebody who is, engaging in coercive control through co-parenting, what to do for the kids and how to help them. I do take a lot of like side certifications and workshops to help with that kind of stuff. So I love it. Sometimes I get to the end of the week and I'm like, man, how did I see 20 clients this week? And because I like really look forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you're almost partly like playing therapist a little bit, right? Like how
Yeah, that's kind of the next thing on my list, I think, is it's time to bark up that tree. I have a double master's in education, so working with others comes naturally. But I do think I would like to put a therapist feather in my cap, if you will.
No, that would fit very well. And you've been open about your own, mental health journey. You see a therapist. You've talked about your anxiety. How does that manifest for you now? The anxiety and whatnot.
It's just a part of who I am, and I'm taking Zoloft for the last 5 years or so, which has tremendously changed my life. My OBGYN knew, because I was open with him, about how nervous I was to have any postpartum issues, depression or anxiety, because I was already anxious. And when I was pregnant, a girl I had gone to college with had taken her own life because of postpartum psychosis. And she was like the quintessential perfect girl, like the most beautiful, the happiest, the life of the party, beautiful husband, beautiful life. She died.
Oh my God.
Her baby was only a month old. And now her husband is a warrior in the world of postpartum depression. But it hit me. So I was really open with him about my feelings. And I remember this feeling after I had Bella. Like I was so happy and I loved her, but I would just look at her and be like, oh my God, I have to do this again tomorrow. Oh my God, what if I don't want to do this tomorrow? Oh my God, what if she cries? I was like terrified of not being able to like make her happy. And I told my doctor at my 6-week checkup and he said, we're putting you on something. And then he referred me to a psychiatrist and my life is forever changed because that anxiety that I had for so long that was undealt with led to many other issues. Eating disorder issues, body dysmorphia, OCD sort of compulsions about my weight or my workouts or how my day-to-day routines. I get very stuck in routine because that's my sort of trying to exercise control over what I can control. And Zoloft probably fixed about 75% of that. And the rest is work that I am always going to have to do with my therapist for my body dysmorphia, my eating issues, my co-parenting therapist. I rely on people for the help that I need when I need it.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing. I wish, more people knew how many of us, myself included, are on medication and how much it helps. And not that either of us are doctors, but there's still this stigma around we're getting that type of help. And even me, I've only been on it about a year now, and I'm doing this podcast. I am open to all of this stuff, and I even had that moment of like, do I really want to go on medication? Is it okay? Does it mean I'm going to be on it forever? And you know what? Who cares if I am? So whatever. But it's scary at first.
Well, that's the thing. If you had diabetes, you'd have no hesitation in taking or doing whatever you needed to do to fix your health, right? To stay alive. And that was how I started to see my medication for my anxiety. Because I remember he said Zoloft, my psychiatrist, and I looked it up and I'm like, depression, I don't have that. And I realized, wait a second, I go through very depressive periods. Yes, I maybe do have that. And how debilitated I was by my anxiety versus how much I could live in a different way. And let me tell you, the first few weeks that I was taking it, I'll never forget. Someone with anxiety tends to just like live in their heads and worry nonstop or overthink things. I was walking in this path that I walk. It's like a 3 mile path in my neighborhood that I love outdoors. And like there was a breeze. And like I walked past like a bush with flowers and I'm like, God, that breeze feels so good. What is, and I kid you
I know.
not, I had been walking that same circle for years
Hmm.
and never stopped to appreciate the beauty of it because I couldn't, because I was so in here and so caught up with whatever crap I was like ruminating over that, oh my God, every single time I walk that circle, even if I'm in a bad mood or even if I have stuff going on, I think about that moment because literally taking that pill allowed me to appreciate the beauty of a nice day.
Yeah. No, it's
It's
amazing.
it's
Yeah,
wild
it is.
and it's worth it.
Yeah. I remember right before I got on medication, I was saying to my therapist, you know, I realized that I haven't taken, this was like in the middle of lockdown, right? But I was like, I realized I haven't taken the kids outside in a week. And that's because the thought of getting dressed is just daunting. I don't want to put a bra on. I don't want to do anything. Like, no.
Mhm.
And how she explained it to me, and it was so dead on. She's like, if we can get you with a psychiatrist and get you on medication, she goes, you still might not want to take them outside, but you'll put the bra on or you won't, and you'll do it. Like, you'll just get up. You still might not want to, but you can get up. You can get out of the
Yeah.
bed and you can get out of your own way enough to do things and live. And it was I heard that and I was like, yep, okay, need that.
Well, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I would always be in a social setting, whether it was with my family or friends, and I was just constantly thinking of like how I can get out of there, how I could go home. I never knew how to be present in a
Mm,
situation,
yeah.
in any type of setting. Like I think about my grandparents who I lived with for a period of time in my 20s. They would always say, "You're always in a rush. Like, where are you always off to?" It was like, because I had so much nervous energy. I didn't realize that about myself. I couldn't
Mm,
just be. And now, going to dinner with girlfriends and not like tapping my leg under the table, like waiting for the check so I can go on to the next thing, even
right.
if there was no next thing,
Right.
just the gift of being able to be present
Hmm.
with my daughter, on a date with my husband, in my sessions with clients. Like I couldn't do that without my Zoloft,
Hmm.
without my little pill. So I'm very grateful for it.
I know. I know. I just wish more people do that. Not everyone needs it, right? But that if you do, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because as soon as
And if you don't want to take to social media to tell the world you're taking it, then don't.
exactly.
Keep it a personal thing.
Right.
But knowing that these pills were created to help you live a better life, just like you would take Advil when you have a headache or medicine for your diabetes.
Yeah. And so, Michelle, you mentioned taking a walk, you've got your Zoloft, you're very busy, you've got 20 clients in a day, whatever it is. How do you make the time to take care of yourself?
Oh, I working out is my life. And not it's really nice to be able to say that now and not have it be attached to what I'm going to look like. It's how I'm
Mm,
going to feel. I schedule about 3 to 4 workouts a week.
okay.
And then even on the days that I'm not in a workout class or with my trainer, I literally will sell my clothing to pay for my trainer. That's how much I need it. She's a strength trainer. I have found I feel like a better human when I lift weights. I feel both mentally and physically stronger. But even on the days that I'm not in a workout class, I walk, I have a dog.
Hmm.
I'll say to my husband, like, I need an hour.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want anyone else to touch me, talk to me, ask me a question, don't want to hear my phone. I put on my headphones and I'm out the door.
Yeah.
Elle Woods said in Legally Blonde, endorphins make you happy. Exercise gives you endorphins, and happy people just don't kill their husbands. There's something to that. As cheesy as it sounds, in the week after I got separated, the first thing I did was sign up for a kickboxing class because I was like, I'm just gonna punch the bag. I remember walking out of each class feeling like Beyonce. Like badass woman, like empowered. I was 3 days separated, but it helps so much for your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, I've started, and this was a suggestion from a therapist, Jax Anderson. She said that she intentionally, before she works out, she says to herself, is this for my mental health or my physical health? Because, and for
Yep.
me, I've started doing that now, and it took so much pressure off to make every workout intense and sweating and losing my mind. It was like sometimes I just
Yeah.
need to move, and that has to be enough.
And sometimes it's just a way to disconnect from
Yeah.
everything else in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like if you put on a podcast or you put on a playlist, like how nice to get lost in that for a little bit. The other thing I do obsessively is read.
Mm.
And I'm not sitting here reading self-help, even though I just wrote a self-help book. I am obsessed with escapist fiction.
Mm.
So like the romance novels, like On the Beach in Nantucket by Elin Hilderbrand right now are my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or Colleen Hoover is another brilliant fiction writer. I just like live for the opportunity to get lost in a book because it really takes me outside of my head for a little bit.
Yeah. I have to work on that because I am the person that if it's not a self-help book, I'm like, well, this is not a productive use of my time then. Like,
So much of my life is self-help. Like I take a lot of courses and I'm constantly reading articles and speaking to attorneys and understanding legal jargon. For me, like I do it because I can escape literally. It's escapist fiction.
yeah.
And most people say, well, I have kids, I can't read. I get that. So I literally read when my daughter's with her dad.
Yeah. Well, and I took the method of even if it is my self-help books, take the amount of pages and divide it by the amount of days that I want to finish it, and it makes it way more approachable. I'm like, okay, you know what? I only need to read 10 pages a day, and I finish this book in 2 weeks. And
That's a great
to
strategy.
me, that works most of the time because it just makes it
I like that.
doable, with the
Yeah,
kids and everything we have going on. It's just, yeah, it's too much. But
totally.
anyway, Michelle, is there anything that you want to leave people with or bring up that I didn't think to ask you today?
I want to talk about my
Of
book. I have
course.
to plug it.
Of course.
Please pre-order it. It's today is the end of September, so my book will basically be out in 3 months. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. It'll be Kindle and audiobook. It's available on BarnesandNobleBooks.com, all of the websites that you can order books from.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Mom's Moving On, Real Life Advice for Conquering Divorce, Co-Parenting Through Conflict and Becoming Your Best Self. And it's really like a what to expect when you're expecting, but for divorcing
Oh,
moms.
that's great.
It's kind of like the guide to your daily life
Mm-hmm.
as a divorced mom. And I had a lot of fun writing it because it took not fun, but like I really got to take all of the things and go step by step and make like a manual.
Mm-hmm.
So that's available. If you're interested in working with me, you can find me at the Michelle Dempsey on social media, all social media platforms, or my website is momsmovingon.com. Oh, and the podcast. Listen to the podcast.
Yes.
Mom's Moving On.
So Michelle Dempsey or Mom's Moving On. Just Google those. You're going to find everything.
Everything, you'll
Yeah.
find it.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to your book, and maybe once the dust settles on all the press I'm sure you have going on for that, I'll have you back and you can really dive into it for us. But this was great,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. Appreciate you and the work that you do, I think is very important. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So, first of all, thank you, Michelle, for so gracefully responding to me sharing my experience with divorce. I wasn't sure I would keep all of that in the episode, but I think it's important to share because that's why I'm here, right? I want to normalize talking about these topics and make them more approachable. I struggle to share my story because I feel like it's not really mine to tell, and in many ways, it isn't. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect on me. And although my experience is not the same as my siblings or parents or that of Michelle's, each of our stories shape how we view the world today. Michelle's experience gave her great insight on how to co-parent, how to be a great stepmom, and it's what was the foundation for her life's work. It feels like this is where I would offer what my experience gives me, and I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, I've not really thought about it so much. I mean, I know how it affected me growing up, and I can pinpoint times and examples of, moments in life where I was affected. But looking to the future, thinking of how it shapes me as a parent and spouse now, that's something I need to think more about. And, well, I won't think about it now on your time, but I'm making a note of it for therapy. So, anyway, please check her out if you haven't yet, whether you have experience with divorce or not. When it comes to parenting, mothering, wifing, and all around girl bossing, Michelle just gets it and puts into words what many of us struggle to. So thank you, Michelle, once again for joining me. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.